The ocean has never stopped building giants. For 500 million years, it has produced creatures of impossible size, animals so vast that nothing in the world above the waterline has ever come close. And every single one of them is gone, replaced each time by something even larger, even more extraordinary than what came before. This has happened not once, not twice, 6 times, 6 separate dynasties, 6 creatures that sat at the absolute peak of their world, unchallenged, fully formed, the largest thing moving through the water in every direction for hundreds of miles. And 6 times, without exception, the ocean that built them took them back. They did not disappear because something hunted them. Nothing could. Each one was the most dominant predator its ocean had ever produced. And still they vanished, leaving behind, in some cases, almost nothing at all, a few fragments of bone, a scattering of teeth across the ocean floor, a silence where something colossal used to be. One of those dynasties is not over. The largest animal in the 4.5 billion year history of this planet is still alive, and it came within a single human lifetime of joining all the others. 6 dynasties, 6 disappearances, and one pattern written beneath every single one, a pattern the ocean has been repeating since before complex life existed and has not stopped. Today, we are traveling back in time to prehistoric seas to see the complete story of every giant the ocean has ever built, their rise, their dominance, their fall, and what connects every disappearance across 500 million years. If you enjoy settling in with stories that travel this far into Earth's past, hit like and subscribe. And while you're down there, drop a comment to tell me where in the world you're watching from today and what the time is there. Now let's start with the one rule every ocean giant has been forced to obey. Every giant that will appear in this story, no matter how different its shape, ancestry, or era, was following the same law. It is an idea written into the physics of the ocean itself, one that has guided life for hundreds of millions of years. Without it, the parade of immense reptiles, towering sharks, and colossal whales would never have existed. Their histories begin with a shared foundation that reaches far deeper than any single species. Across dry land, growth eventually meets a physical barrier. Bones must support the full weight of the body with every step. As animals become heavier, the strain on joints, muscles, and skeleton increases until carrying additional mass becomes increasingly difficult. Food also becomes a challenge. An enormous land animal must gather enough energy each day to maintain that great body, and there comes a point where the balance begins to fail. Even the mighty sauropod dinosaur Patagotitan majorum, estimated to weigh around 70 tons, existed close to that practical limit. The sea changes those rules. Water surrounds the body and supports much of its weight through buoyancy, easing the burden that gravity places on bones and muscles. An animal drifting through the open ocean does not experience the same constant downward force faced by creatures crossing plains or forests. Freed from much of that structural constraint, evolution gains room to experiment with bodies of astonishing scale. That freedom comes with another condition. Once gravity becomes less restrictive, food becomes the true boundary. A giant body demands an equally giant supply of energy. Every heartbeat, every movement of a tail or flipper, every breath at the surface carries a cost that must be repaid through nutrition. An ocean capable of sustaining enormous creatures must continuously produce extraordinary quantities of life, beginning with microscopic organisms floating near the sunlit surface. Those tiny drifting communities feed small animals, which in turn nourish fish, squid, marine reptiles, sharks, and whales. Each link supports the next, forming an immense chain that stretches from organisms too small to notice all the way to animals longer than many houses. When the lower levels flourish, energy rises through the food web, allowing giants to survive. When those foundations weaken, the highest predators feel the change before long, even if they remain unmatched by any rival. The pattern has repeated many times. Unrelated groups have each discovered their own path toward gigantic size, arriving through entirely different designs. Some relied on powerful jaws, others mastered speed, crushing strength, or filter feeding. Evolution explored many solutions, though every success depended upon the same generous ocean. The body plan changed. The underlying requirement never did. Changes in climate, chemistry, sea circulation, volcanic activity, asteroid impacts, or later human exploitation all reshaped that balance in different ways. Whenever those shifts reduced the ocean's ability to support immense bodies, the largest inhabitants gradually vanished. Their disappearance reflected the changing character of the sea that had sustained them for so long. Seen through this lens, marine gigantism becomes more than a collection of spectacular fossils. It becomes a recurring expression of favorable conditions, appearing whenever the ocean could supply enough energy to sustain extraordinary lives. Each giant was the living measure of its world, growing only because the sea allowed it, enduring only while that permission remained. The first chapter of the ocean's long procession of giants began after a world that barely resembled the one we know today. Around 252 million years ago, the Great Dying had swept through Earth's seas, removing about 96% of marine species. Food webs unraveled, familiar predators disappeared, and habitats that had once been occupied for countless generations lay open. The ocean still held life, though much of its former richness had been stripped away, leaving extraordinary opportunities for whatever lineage could adapt first. Along the shores of that altered world lived reptiles whose ancestors belonged entirely to the land. They breathed air, walked on four sturdy limbs, and carried bodies shaped for solid ground. Their earliest ventures into shallow coastal waters were modest, driven by food and survival rather than any grand direction. Even so, each generation that spent a little more time swimming gained advantages unavailable to relatives that remained inland. Natural selection began favoring stronger swimmers, more streamlined bodies, and movements suited to water instead of earth. The pace of that transformation remains one of the most striking episodes preserved in the fossil record. Within roughly 3 to 5 million years, a brief interval in geological history, the descendants of those shoreline reptiles had become unmistakably marine animals. Their limbs broadened into paddle shaped flippers, capable of steady propulsion. Their bodies stretched into smooth fish like forms that reduced resistance while moving through water. The nostrils shifted higher on the skull, making breathing at the surface more efficient. Every generation carried another refinement until returning to life on land no longer fit the design evolution had produced. Some of these early ichthyosaurs already reached about 49 feet in length, demonstrating that immense size appeared with surprising speed once favorable conditions aligned. The recovering ocean supplied abundant ecological space, and few competitors stood ready to challenge these newcomers. Different branches of the lineage spread into separate lifestyles, exploring opportunities across shallow coasts and deeper offshore waters. Diversity expanded alongside body size, creating an entire family of marine reptiles whose forms reflected the growing complexity of the recovering seas. By around 245 million years ago, one species known as Symbospondylus yangorum, discovered in what is now Nevada, measured close to 55 feet long. Its existence showed that gigantic marine reptiles had already emerged, while the ocean was still rebuilding from the greatest extinction event in Earth's history. Size was becoming one successful answer to an environment rich with opportunity and relatively free from established rivals. Another transformation completed their separation from land. Fossils preserving mothers with unborn young inside their bodies reveal that ichthyosaurs gave birth in the water. They no longer crawled ashore to reproduce. Every stage of life unfolded at sea, from birth to adulthood. Their descendants would never need beaches or riverbanks as part of their existence. The ocean had become home in the fullest sense. Across the millions of years that followed, ichthyosaurs expanded into an impressive range of ecological roles. Some chased swift fish through open water, others searched deeper realms, while additional forms developed feeding strategies unlike those of their relatives. They represented far more than a single successful species. They became an entire dynasty descended from terrestrial ancestors, shaped by an emptied sea that rewarded adaptation with remarkable possibility. For roughly 150 million years, their lineage remained among the defining inhabitants of the world's oceans, enduring across spans of time that exceeded the entire age of mammals so far. Near the close of the Triassic period, the ichthyosaur lineage reached a scale that stretched the limits of what paleontology believed possible. Among the group known as the shastosaurids, one species grew beyond every marine reptile formally recognized before it. Its story survives through an astonishingly small collection of evidence, leaving the outline of an immense animal preserved in only a handful of fossil fragments. The first piece appeared in May of 2016 along the shoreline at Lilstock in Somerset, England. Fossil collector Paul de la Salle noticed several enormous chunks of bone scattered among the rocks. Their unusual size had caused similar remains from the area to be mistaken for dinosaur fossils in the past. Curious about what he had found, he brought the material to paleontologist Dean Lomax. Careful examination revealed that the bones belonged to the lower jaw of an ichthyosaur. More specifically, they formed part of the syringular, a major bone that strengthened the rear portion of the jaw. Even in its incomplete state, the preserved section measured more than 3 feet long. For several years, those fragments stood alone. Their extraordinary proportions hinted at an animal of exceptional size, although the picture remained incomplete. Then, in May of 2020, another discovery unfolded along the same coastline. 11-year-old Ruby Reynolds was searching for fossils with her father, Justin, at Blue Anchor Beach, about 6 miles from the earlier discovery. Ruby noticed a large bone emerging from a muddy slope. As more of it was uncovered, it became clear that the fossil belonged to another syringular. This specimen was larger than the first and preserved with far greater detail. Researchers compared both discoveries over the following years. Their shapes matched each other closely, despite being found a decade apart by people with no connection to one another. In April of 2024, the scientific study describing the animal appeared in the journal Public Library of Science 1. The researchers gave the giant a formal name, Ichthyotitan severnensis, meaning giant fish lizard of the Severn, honoring the nearby estuary where both remarkable jawbones had rested for more than 200 million years. The blue anchor specimen transformed educated guesses into stronger scientific estimates. Its jawbone exceeded 6.5 feet in length. Comparing that bone with closely related ichthyosaurs suggested a total body length ranging from about 72 feet to 85 feet. Those dimensions placed the animal alongside the largest blue whales in overall length, making it the largest marine reptile ever formally described. Microscopic examination of the fossil carried another surprise. Growth patterns preserved inside the bone showed that the individual had not yet reached full maturity. The skeleton was still adding new tissue when the animal died. Fully grown adults may have exceeded even the largest current estimates, although no additional remains have yet been recovered to confirm that possibility. Ichthyosaur severnensis lived around 202 million years ago during the closing moments of the Triassic period. Its existence rests upon two jaw fragments, discovered years apart along the same English coast, yet those bones reveal an animal that stood at the summit of its dynasty. From such modest evidence emerged the outline of one of the greatest giants the ocean has ever carried. No dynasty in the ocean lasts forever, even one that had flourished across immense stretches of geological time. The giant ichthyosaurs had reached extraordinary size, occupied countless marine habitats, and refined their lives for the open sea with remarkable success. Then the world itself shifted. Around 201 million years ago, the closing chapter of the Triassic period brought another planetary upheaval, one that reached across continents and oceans alike. Scientists recognize this interval as the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event, one of the five greatest mass extinctions known from Earth's history. Roughly 70 to 75% of all species disappeared during this transition. Entire ecological communities unraveled together. The losses reached plants, animals, and countless marine organisms whose existence depended upon stable environmental conditions that no longer remained in place. The driving force came from an enormous episode of volcanism known as the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province. Across what would later become North America, South America, Africa, and Europe, immense fissures opened within the crust. Lava poured across the landscape over repeated eruptions, eventually covering an area greater than the combined landmass of the United States and Canada. No volcanic event witnessed by human civilization approaches its scale. Those eruptions transformed far more than the surface of the land. Vast quantities of carbon dioxide entered the atmosphere over extended periods, strengthening global warming and altering rainfall patterns around the planet. The oceans absorbed part of that carbon dioxide, changing their chemistry in ways that placed increasing stress on marine organisms. Surface waters warmed, while circulation patterns shifted. In deeper regions, oxygen became increasingly scarce, reducing the habitable space available for many forms of life. The conditions echoed those that had followed the Great Dying many millions of years earlier. Marine ecosystems once again faced rising temperatures, chemical disruption, and declining oxygen. Although life had recovered enough to support magnificent giants, the foundation supporting that abundance weakened as environmental stability faded. The richest food webs contracted, and the largest animals, whose immense bodies demanded dependable energy supplies, became increasingly vulnerable. Among the casualties were the giant shastosaurid ichthyosaurs, including the lineage represented by Ichthyotitan severnensis. Their disappearance marked the end of the greatest marine reptiles the Triassic Ocean had ever produced. Smaller ichthyosaurs continued into the Jurassic period, proving that the family itself endured. Even so, none matched the astonishing dimensions reached by their largest relatives. The chapter of ocean reptiles exceeding 80 feet had come to its conclusion. The fossil record preserves this transition with striking clarity. Giant shastosaurids vanish near the boundary, separating the Triassic and Jurassic periods, leaving no confirmed descendants, carrying forward their immense body plan. Their absence reminds us that evolutionary success always depends upon environmental support. A body designed for one world may struggle when that world changes beyond recognition. As the giant ichthyosaurs disappeared, another vacancy appeared at the summit of marine life. The highest position within the food web no longer belonged to any established ruler. Countless prey species continued their own recoveries. Habitats evolved into new forms, and opportunities emerged for animals carrying entirely different designs. The ocean had removed one solution without ending the search itself. Across the recovering seas, evolution continued its patient work, shaping fresh possibilities from lineages whose ancestors had followed very different paths through the history of life. After the upheaval that closed the Triassic period, the seas did not remain diminished for long. Life possesses an extraordinary ability to rebuild when conditions allow, and the Jurassic oceans gradually filled once more with expanding reefs, flourishing fish populations, and growing communities of cephalopods. Countless ecological relationships formed again, weaving fresh networks of predator and prey. The same underlying rule returned with them. As marine productivity increased, the possibility for giants emerged once more. The next rulers, however, would not resemble the swift reptiles that had dominated before. Evolution rarely retraces an identical path when another solution can succeed. This time, the leading predators belong to an entirely different branch of marine reptiles. One descended from the broader group known as plesiosaurs. Among them arose the pliosaurs, animals shaped less for prolonged pursuit and more for overwhelming force delivered within moments. Their bodies reflected that purpose from nose to tail. A pliosaur carried a broad skull that appeared immense beside the rest of its frame. The neck remained short and heavily muscled, allowing the head to function like a powerful battering ram without the long leverage seen in its distant relatives. Four sturdy flippers worked together in coordinated strokes, producing rapid bursts of acceleration through the water. Instead of relying upon sustained speed across great distances, these animals specialized in sudden movement that could close the gap before prey escaped. The jaws revealed another layer of that strategy. Thick, cone-shaped teeth lined both upper and lower jaws, each built to seize struggling animals with remarkable strength. Their teeth lacked the blade, like edges found in some predators, because cutting flesh was not the primary objective. Holding prey securely mattered far more. Once captured, powerful jaw muscles could deliver crushing bites capable of damaging bone and shell alike. Fossil evidence preserves broken bones bearing marks that match pliosaur teeth, offering glimpses of the tremendous force concentrated within those enormous skulls. Although pliosaurs and the familiar long-necked plesiosaurs belong to the same larger order, their evolutionary paths diverged in striking ways. Long-necked relatives developed extended reaches for capturing smaller prey with swift sideways strikes. Pliosaurs followed the opposite direction. Their necks shortened while their skulls expanded, shifting more of the body's investment toward bite power than flexibility. Two close relatives arrived at dramatically different answers to survival within the same ocean. As Jurassic ecosystems matured, pliosaurs diversified into numerous species occupying different ecological roles. Smaller members hunted fish and medium-sized marine reptiles. Larger forms expanded their diets further, taking advantage of prey that few competitors could challenge. Their growing variety reflected the increasing richness of the sea itself. Productive oceans rarely support only one successful design. They encourage many experiments, with natural selection refining each according to available opportunities. By the middle of the Jurassic period, The largest pliosaurs had risen to the highest levels of marine food webs. The position once held by giant ichthyosaurs belonged to new rulers carrying a completely different body plan. They depended upon explosive strength instead of long-distance endurance, immense skulls instead of streamlined forms, and gripping jaws instead of narrow snouts. The throne at the summit of the ocean had not remained vacant. It had welcomed another lineage, proving once again that when the sea could nourish giants, evolution always discovered a way to build them. Far to the north, where rugged islands now rise from cold seas, layers of stone preserved the remains of one of the Jurassic Ocean's greatest hunters. Long before those rocks stood beneath Arctic skies, they rested below warm marine waters filled with ammonites, fish, and reptiles. Hidden within those sediments waited the evidence of a predator whose immense strength would only be recognized after millions of years had passed. During fieldwork that began in 2006, a Norwegian research team, led by paleontologist Jorn Hurum, explored the islands of Svalbard, an archipelago lying between mainland Norway and the North Pole. Their excavations uncovered the remains of enormous marine reptiles preserved within late Jurassic rocks. Across several field seasons, researchers carefully recovered partial skulls, vertebrae, flippers, and additional skeletal elements belonging to two exceptionally large individuals. Every fossil demanded painstaking work before its significance became fully understood. Years of preparation and comparison followed. The bones revealed distinctive features separating these animals from previously described species. In 2012, the formal scientific description appeared in the Norwegian Journal of Geology, introducing the species Pliosaurus funke. The name honored Björn and May-Lis Funke, the volunteers who first recognized the importance of the fossils during the expedition. Before receiving its official scientific identity, the animal had already attracted public attention under the informal nickname Predator 10, reflecting its fearsome appearance rather than any scientific classification. The reconstructed animal measured roughly 33 to 42 feet in length, with an estimated weight approaching 12 tons. Although shorter than the greatest ichthyosaurs, its proportions created an entirely different kind of giant. More than 6.5 feet of that length belonged to the skull alone. Massive jaw muscles anchored against broad bones, creating a head that dominated the front of the body and concentrated tremendous force into every bite. Its teeth completed that formidable design. Thick, conical crowns projected from the jaws like polished spikes, each suited for gripping prey with exceptional security. Instead of slicing flesh into neat sections, they pierced deeply and resisted escape. Large fish, marine reptiles, and any substantial animal unfortunate enough to encounter those jaws faced overwhelming mechanical power delivered through crushing muscles and reinforced skull bones. Biomechanical studies suggest that Pliosaurus funki generated a bite force approaching 33,000 pounds per square inch, placing it among the most powerful bites ever estimated for any known vertebrate. That force exceeded estimates for Tyrannosaurus rex several times over and greatly surpassed the bite of the modern saltwater crocodile, itself famous for extraordinary jaw strength. Such comparisons reveal how thoroughly the pliosaur body plan emphasized overwhelming power above nearly every other characteristic. Around 147 million years ago, this predator occupied the highest position within its marine ecosystem. Ichthyosaurs, smaller plesiosaurs, large fish, and other sizable animals all formed potential prey. Few creatures living beside it possessed the size or weaponry necessary to present a meaningful threat. The Jurassic seas had once again produced an apex hunter unlike any that came before. Looking across the story so far, a deeper pattern becomes increasingly clear. Giant ichthyosaurs and giant pliosaurs emerged from unrelated evolutionary histories, carrying different bodies and different hunting strategies. Their similarities rested elsewhere. Each appeared when productive oceans supplied enough energy to sustain immense predators, showing once more that the greatest giants followed the changing fortunes of the sea itself. Unlike the sudden endings that marked some chapters of Earth's history, the decline of the giant pliosaurs unfolded across millions of years. Their disappearance was measured in gradual absences rather than a single devastating moment. Fossils become less common, the greatest species fade away, and the lineage slowly retreats from its former prominence. The process left behind a different lesson, showing that even successful predators can lose their place when the living world around them changes step by step. Around 145 million years ago, the Jurassic period gave way to the Cretaceous. No single catastrophe swept across the planet at that boundary. Instead, the oceans entered an interval of continuing environmental adjustment. Coastlines shifted as global sea levels rose and fell. Broad stretches of shallow water changed shape or disappeared altogether. Ocean currents followed new pathways, altering how heat and nutrients moved between different regions of the world. These changes unfolded gradually, yet they steadily reshaped marine ecosystems. Those environmental shifts reached every level of the food web. Communities of fish evolved into new forms, while marine reptiles that had flourished throughout the Jurassic became less abundant in many habitats. Large prey species that once occupied predictable hunting grounds declined or changed their distributions. Predators, depending upon those established food resources, faced increasing challenges as familiar ecological patterns dissolved into something new. For giant pliosaurs, this changing world proved especially demanding. Their bodies had evolved around explosive strength, massive skulls, and powerful bites suited to tackling large prey. Such specialization had brought remarkable success for tens of millions of years, though specialized designs often rely upon equally specialized environments. As the composition of marine life shifted, the advantages that had once elevated pliosaurs to the summit of the food web became less effective than they had been before. The fossil record reflects that gradual contraction. Early members of the Cretaceous still included pliosaurs, though diversity steadily diminished. Fewer species occupied the oceans, and the immense giants that had dominated Jurassic seas became increasingly uncommon. Average body size declined as well, suggesting that the environmental support, once capable of sustaining the largest hunters, no longer remained as widespread. Productive ecosystems continued to exist, although they increasingly favored different ecological strategies. This transformation unfolded across roughly 70 million years, an extraordinary span by human standards. Generation after generation adapted where possible, while unsuccessful branches disappeared. Evolution continued searching for solutions, but the grand lineage of giant pliosaurs never regained its earlier dominance. By around 89 million years ago, the great pliosaurs had vanished from the fossil record altogether. Their long reign had ended without a single dramatic finale, concluding through countless smaller changes, accumulating across immense stretches of time. Their disappearance illustrates another expression of the ocean's enduring rule. Gigantic predators depend upon far more than their own strength. They require abundant prey, stable food webs, and environmental conditions capable of supporting every layer beneath them. When those foundations shift, even the mightiest hunters gradually lose the advantages that once defined them. The pliosaurs did not fail through weakness. They encountered an ocean that was becoming increasingly different from the one that had shaped their success, and another evolutionary path was already beginning to emerge within the changing seas. Some of the greatest rulers of the sea began their story with footprints on land. Their ancestors did not inherit oceans already woven into their history. They belonged to a branch of lizards living along coastlines during the Cretaceous period, moving between shore and shallow water in search of food. These modest reptiles, commonly called agialosaurs, carried no obvious sign that their descendants would one day become among the largest predators ever to patrol the sea. Around 100 million years ago, changing coastlines and productive coastal habitats created fresh opportunities. Food gathered along sheltered waters where fish, cephalopods, and other marine animals flourished. Individuals that swam more effectively gained access to richer hunting grounds. Generation after generation, natural selection favored bodies increasingly suited to aquatic life. Evolution responded with remarkable speed, compressing an extraordinary transformation into less than 20 million years, one of the fastest large-scale returns from land to sea known in the fossil record. The changes reached nearly every part of the body. Limbs that once supported walking gradually broadened into sturdy paddles, capable of steering through open water. The tail lengthened and developed a downward curved fluke, becoming the principal source of propulsion. Flexible vertebrae allowed the body to undulate efficiently while swimming. The skull expanded, and the jaws became deeper and stronger, providing room for larger muscles and wider gapes. Each alteration complemented the next, until these former shoreline lizards had become fully marine predators, spending every stage of life in the ocean. Their ancestry remained visible despite those dramatic adaptations. Mosasaurs belonged to the same broad lineage as modern monitor lizards. The living Komodo dragon, the largest lizard alive today, offers a distant glimpse of that heritage through its body shape, muscular build, and powerful jaws. Yet, the comparison also highlights how profoundly the ocean reshaped the lineage. Freed from many structural limits imposed by life on land, evolution enlarged those familiar features to an entirely different scale. Some mosasaurs eventually reached about 56 feet in length, turning a family of terrestrial reptiles into giants of the sea. Timing also favored their expansion. The great ichthyosaurs had disappeared long before, while giant pliosaurs had entered a prolonged decline. Productive marine ecosystems still offered abundant prey, though the largest predator niches had become increasingly available. Mosasaurs diversified into that ecological space with remarkable success. Instead of following a single lifestyle, they evolved into an assortment of specialized forms adapted to different food sources and hunting methods. Certain species developed rounded teeth capable of crushing hard-shelled animals such as ammonites and marine turtles. Others possessed sharper dentition suited for pursuing fish and squid through open water. The largest forms carried broad skulls and formidable jaws that allowed them to tackle substantial prey, including other marine reptiles. Diversity became one of their greatest strengths, enabling closely related species to occupy different roles while sharing the same seas. By roughly 85 million years ago, mosasaurs had spread across oceans around the globe. Fossils from multiple continents reveal their presence in warm inland seas, broad continental shelves, and open marine environments. They had become dominant predators through an evolutionary journey unlike those of the giants before them. Their rise demonstrated once again that when productive oceans presented opportunity, entirely different branches of life could arrive at extraordinary size, each following its own path, while answering the same enduring invitation from the sea. The story of the greatest mosasaur begins with a skull emerging from pale stone long before anyone understood what extinction meant. In 1770, workers uncovered remarkable fossil bones deep within a chalk quarry near the city of Maastricht in what is now the Netherlands. The remains rested about 90 feet below the surface, preserved inside sediments that had once accumulated on the floor of a warm Cretaceous sea. Their unusual shape puzzled everyone who examined them, resisting every attempt to fit them into the living world. For decades, the fossil remained an object of debate. Some believed it belonged to a crocodile, while others imagined an unfamiliar whale or giant fish. A clearer interpretation arrived in 1808 when the French naturalist Georges Cuvier carefully studied the skull. His comparisons revealed that the animal represented a completely vanished form of life. The specimen became one of the earliest and most influential pieces of evidence supporting the reality of extinction, demonstrating that entire kinds of creatures could flourish across the earth and then disappear forever. The animal eventually received the name Mosasaurus hoffmanii. It represented the largest known member of its remarkable family, reaching an estimated length between 43 and 56 feet, while weighing roughly 15 tons. Its body combined powerful swimming ability with an imposing skull designed for seizing substantial prey. A long, muscular tail provided propulsion, broad flippers guided movement through the water, and flexible joints helped the predator maneuver efficiently across open seas and coastal environments alike. Its jaws possessed features unlike those of nearly any other marine reptile. Along the edges of the mouth stood sturdy, conical teeth capable of gripping struggling animals. Farther inside, another row of teeth lined the roof of the mouth. These pterygoid teeth acted like additional anchors, pulling prey deeper once the first bite had landed. Escaping such a grip became exceedingly difficult because every movement drove captured animals farther inward instead of outward. The skull itself also displayed an unusual degree of flexibility. Ligaments joining parts of the lower jaw allowed the mouth to widen considerably while feeding, an adaptation resembling the conditions seen in modern snakes. Large prey could therefore be swallowed in stages, even when wider than the predator's closed jaws. This capability expanded the range of animals that Mosasaurus hoffmanii could exploit, making it one of the most versatile hunters of the late Cretaceous oceans. Its success extended far beyond impressive anatomy. Fossils assigned to Mosasaurus and closely related forms have been recovered from nearly every continent except Antarctica, revealing a distribution achieved by very few large predators in Earth's history. These reptiles occupied warm inland seas, broad continental margins, and open marine habitats across much of the globe. Their diet reflected the abundance surrounding them, including fish, sharks, marine reptiles, seabirds, and even other mosasaurs when opportunity arose. By the closing few million years of the Cretaceous period, Mosasaurus hoffmanii and its close relative Tylosaurus stood at the summit of marine ecosystems. Earlier dynasties had already passed into history. Giant ichthyosaurs belonged to a distant age, and the mighty pliosaurs had long disappeared. The oceans now answered to giant lizards whose ancestors had entered the water only a relatively short time before. Their reign completed another cycle in the long history of marine giants, carrying the pattern forward until Earth's history prepared its next profound turning point. One ordinary day, in the closing chapter of the Cretaceous period, became unlike any that had come before. Around 66 million years ago, An asteroid about 6 miles wide struck the region now known as the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The collision released energy estimated at roughly 10 billion times greater than the atomic bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. Rock vaporized in an instant. Powerful earthquakes rippled through the crust, while immense waves raced across the seas. A towering cloud of dust, molten material, and vapor surged high into the atmosphere, spreading around the globe within days. The immediate violence marked only the beginning. Fine particles suspended in the upper atmosphere gradually blocked much of the sunlight reaching Earth's surface. As daylight faded, temperatures dropped across land and sea. Plants struggled because photosynthesis could no longer proceed normally. Forests withered, and terrestrial ecosystems unraveled with devastating speed. Beneath the ocean's surface, an equally profound transformation unfolded, guided by the same loss of sunlight, but following the intricate pathways of marine food webs. At the foundation of those food webs lived microscopic phytoplankton. These drifting organisms captured sunlight and transformed its energy into living tissue that nourished countless other creatures. Their abundance sustained nearly every larger form of marine life, whether directly or through many intermediate links. When sunlight diminished for an extended period, vast populations of phytoplankton disappeared. The change began at a scale invisible to human eyes, yet its consequences spread across every ocean. Tiny animals that grazed upon phytoplankton soon declined as their food vanished. Fish, feeding upon those drifting creatures, became increasingly scarce. Predators that relied upon those fish also suffered. Each step depended upon the stability of the one beneath it, and each weakened in succession. The collapse moved upward through the food web with relentless consistency, reaching progressively larger animals whose enormous bodies demanded steady supplies of nourishment. At the summit stood the giant mosasaurs. Species such as Mosasaurus hoffmanni required abundant prey drawn from healthy marine ecosystems. Their immense size, rapid growth, and active predatory lifestyles depended upon food webs functioning across entire oceans. As those networks unraveled, even the greatest hunters faced shortages they could not overcome. Strength, speed, and powerful jaws offered no protection against an ecosystem that could no longer sustain them. The extinction followed within a geologically brief interval. After the impact, giant mosasaurs disappeared, joined by the remaining plesiosaurs that had survived into the late Cretaceous. Every lineage of large marine reptile that had ruled the oceans through successive eras came to an end. Their history had stretched across well over 100 million years, encompassing multiple evolutionary experiments and several distinct dynasties, yet all concluded within a comparatively brief span measured in thousands of years. This ending differed from earlier transitions between marine giants. Previous turnovers had left room for another reptilian lineage to expand into newly available ecological roles. The aftermath of the asteroid impact proved far more comprehensive. It removed the dominant predators, disrupted the prey beneath them, and shattered the ecological framework supporting the entire system. The ocean lost far more than its largest hunters. It lost the living architecture that had sustained them. When marine ecosystems eventually recovered, they emerged without giant marine reptiles reclaiming their former place. Their remarkable chapter had reached its final page, leaving behind fossil evidence of repeated evolutionary brilliance, and reminding us that even the most successful designs remain inseparable from the worlds that sustain them. Recovery began where it always had, among the smallest forms of life. After the devastation that ended the Cretaceous period, sunlight gradually returned to the seas. Microscopic phytoplankton multiplied once more, restoring the foundation upon which marine ecosystems depended. Tiny drifting animals followed, then fish, cephalopods, and larger predators. The rebuilding required millions of years, unfolding layer by layer until the oceans again possessed the complexity capable of sustaining large animals. The land experienced an equally profound transformation. The disappearance of the Nonavian dinosaurs released countless ecological opportunities that had remained occupied for well over 100 million years. Mammals, once generally small and living in the shadow of dominant reptiles, expanded into those vacant roles with remarkable diversity. Within roughly 10 million years after the asteroid impact, they had evolved into runners, climbers, burrowers, grazers, hunters, and many other forms, exploring environments that earlier generations had rarely occupied. Among those expanding lineages were ancestors belonging to the broader group that would later include deer, cattle, pigs, hippopotamuses, and other even-toed hoofed mammals. They began as ordinary terrestrial animals with no obvious connection to the sea. Their limbs carried them across solid ground, their lungs breathed open air, and their bodies remained fully adapted for life on land. Nothing about their appearance suggested they would eventually produce the largest animals ever known. Natural selection, however, operates through countless small differences accumulating across immense spans of time. Some individuals spent more time near rivers, estuaries, and coastal margins where food proved abundant. Others became increasingly capable swimmers, crossing channels or searching for prey in shallow water. Each modest advantage improved survival under particular conditions. Descendants inherited those traits, and over many generations, the boundary between land and water became less rigid for certain populations. The transition did not occur according to a fixed destination. Evolution does not anticipate the future. It responds to immediate opportunities available within each generation. Bodies changed because particular features increased survival in existing environments, whether stronger swimming ability, improved underwater hearing, or limbs capable of moving efficiently through water. Those incremental changes accumulated until entirely new lifestyles emerged from ordinary beginnings. This pathway differed from the earlier histories of marine reptiles. Ichthyosaurs, pliosaurs, and mosasaurs all belonged to reptilian branches, returning independently to ocean life. Mammals represented an entirely separate evolutionary experiment. Warm-blooded physiology, specialized teeth, nursing of young, and complex social behavior accompanied them into aquatic environments. The oceans, emptied of giant marine reptiles after the asteroid impact, offered ecological possibilities that no mammalian lineage had previously explored at such a scale. Early stages of this transition produced animals that still appeared unmistakably terrestrial. Their skeletons reveal sturdy legs, weight-bearing hips, and feet designed for walking, though subtle modifications hint at increasing dependence upon aquatic habitats. Fossils preserve a gradual sequence rather than an abrupt transformation, allowing paleontologists to trace one of the most complete evolutionary journeys ever documented from land into the sea. One remarkable fossil would eventually become central to that story, although its significance was misunderstood when first discovered. During 1834, researchers described enormous fossil remains unlike any mammal then recognized. The elongated body and formidable jaws resembled those of a giant marine reptile, far more than those of any familiar whale. Convinced they had uncovered an immense prehistoric lizard, scientists gave the animal the name Basilosaurus, meaning king lizard. The title endured even after later discoveries revealed a surprising truth. This formidable creature belonged to the whale lineage, marking one of the earliest dramatic chapters in the rise of the mammals that would ultimately inherit the oceans. The seas of the late Eocene bore little resemblance to those of the modern world. Between about 41 million and 34 million years ago, broad tropical waters reached far beyond their present boundaries. The ancient Tethys Sea still stretched between Africa and Europe, linking marine habitats across immense distances. Warm currents carried abundant life through those waters, supporting rich populations of fish, sharks, turtles, and early whales. Within this flourishing setting, a mammal unlike any before it emerged as the dominant hunter. Basilosaurus possessed a body that seemed to belong to another age. Instead of the streamlined form familiar in living whales, it carried an extraordinarily elongated trunk that gave it an almost serpentine appearance while swimming. Its movement likely depended upon sweeping undulations of the entire body, resembling the motion of an eel far more than the powerful up and down tail strokes used by modern whales. The tail certainly contributed to propulsion, though its anatomy reveals a swimming style, representing an earlier stage in whale evolution before the modern design had fully appeared. Its head appeared relatively modest beside the remarkable length of the body, yet the jaws contained an impressive collection of specialized teeth. Pointed teeth near the front excelled at seizing struggling prey, while farther back, serrated cheek teeth sliced flesh with remarkable efficiency. Unlike the simple conical teeth of many marine reptiles, these teeth reflected the mammalian heritage of differentiation, with distinct forms performing different tasks during feeding. Every bite combined gripping, cutting, and processing within a single mouth. Reaching as much as 60 feet in length, Basilosaurus stood as the largest known animal in its marine environment. Size alone granted important advantages, though it was accompanied by formidable predatory ability. Large bony fish, sharks, and smaller whales all formed part of its diet. One frequent victim appears to have been Dorudon, a much smaller whale sharing the same warm seas. Fossils reveal a predator fully capable of hunting close relatives despite belonging to the same evolutionary branch. Some of the strongest evidence comes from Wadi al-Hitan in Egypt, whose name translates as the Valley of the Whales. There, paleontologists have uncovered extraordinary fossil assemblages preserving ancient marine ecosystems with remarkable detail. Several Dorudon skulls bear tooth marks matching the jaws of Basilosaurus. In addition, remains of Dorudon have been discovered within the abdominal region of Basilosaurus skeletons, providing direct evidence that these whales regularly preyed upon one another. Such discoveries transform isolated bones into vivid records of ancient ecological relationships. The rise of Basilosaurus marked far more than the success of a single species. It represented the moment when mammals finally occupied the highest predatory role in the ocean after marine reptiles had dominated for roughly 150 million years. Earlier rulers had belonged to completely different branches of the tree of life, each shaped by separate evolutionary experiments. This newcomer reached the summit, carrying lungs that breathed air, warm blood circulating through its body, and the unmistakable characteristics of a mammal. Its ancestry reached back to ordinary hoofed mammals that once walked upon solid ground. Across millions of years, countless gradual changes had transformed those terrestrial ancestors into fully marine predators capable of ruling tropical seas. The ocean had accepted yet another entirely different body plan, confirming once again that when ecological opportunity returned, evolution repeatedly discovered new ways to build giants from unexpected beginnings. Few fossils preserve an evolutionary journey as clearly as the skeleton of Basilosaurus. Its immense body proclaimed complete mastery of the sea, yet hidden within that same skeleton rested an unexpected reminder of another existence. Unlike the giant marine reptiles that had ruled earlier oceans, this whale still carried unmistakable traces of its terrestrial ancestry. Long after those structures had lost their original purpose, they remained preserved in bone, offering one of the clearest windows into how large mammals return to the water. Near the rear of the body lay a pair of remarkably small hind limbs. They included recognizable thigh bones, lower leg bones, and tiny foot elements arranged in the familiar pattern found in land mammals. These limbs were far too reduced to propel the animal through the sea. They could not support its tremendous weight on solid ground, nor could they contribute meaningfully to steering while swimming. They had become vestigial structures, inherited from ancestors that once depended upon fully functional legs for everyday movement across land. Their presence carries unusual scientific importance because vestigial organs preserve history that natural selection has not yet completely erased. Evolution reshapes existing anatomy instead of constructing entirely new bodies from nothing. Features that become unnecessary may shrink across many generations, though they often persist long after their original role has disappeared. The tiny hind limbs of Basilosaurus therefore stand as physical testimony that this immense marine predator descended from walking mammals. No separate explanation is required when the skeleton itself preserves the sequence. That conclusion becomes even stronger when viewed alongside other fossils documenting early whale evolution. The record is unusually complete, allowing paleontologists to follow gradual anatomical change across millions of years. One of the earliest known whale ancestors, Pakicetus, lived about 53 million years ago in what is now Pakistan. Roughly the size of a wolf, it spent most of its life on land while already possessing subtle features linking it to later whales, particularly within the bones surrounding the ear. Several million years later appeared Ambulocetus, whose name means walking whale. This remarkable mammal could travel across land while also swimming effectively in rivers and coastal waters. Its sturdy limbs still bore weight, though the body already displayed adaptations for aquatic movement. The transition had advanced noticeably, yet life remained divided between two environments. Another important stage arrived with Rhodocetus. Its hind limbs had become smaller, its pelvis connected less firmly to the backbone, and its body spent increasing amounts of time at sea. The tail grew more important for propulsion, while movement across land became progressively less practical. The nostrils also began shifting backward along the skull, beginning the long migration that would eventually produce the blowhole of modern whales. Every fossil added another chapter without requiring sudden leaps or missing intermediates. By the time Basilosaurus appeared, that gradual transformation had reached an extraordinary stage. The hind limbs remained present, complete enough to reveal their ancestry, yet too diminished to perform the work once carried out by the powerful legs of distant predecessors. Nearly every other aspect of the body had become thoroughly marine, though those tiny bones endured as enduring echoes of an earlier existence. This combination of enormous size and lingering ancestry makes Basilosaurus especially compelling. It was neither a land mammal adapting to water nor a modern whale perfected for ocean life. It occupied a remarkable point along a continuous evolutionary pathway, preserved with unusual clarity, carrying within its own skeleton a lasting memory of the ground its ancestors had left behind. For roughly 7 million years, Basilosaurus occupied the highest predatory role in warm tropical seas. Its long body moved through waters that had nurtured an abundance of fish, sharks, and smaller whales. Entire ecosystems had developed under stable climatic conditions that favored broad, shallow marine habitats. The animal appeared perfectly suited to that world, though the stability surrounding it would not last indefinitely. The changes approaching were gradual enough to escape notice within a single lifetime, yet powerful enough to reshape oceans across the globe. Around 34 million years ago, Earth entered one of the most important climatic transitions of the Cenozoic era. Temperatures declined substantially as the Eocene gave way to the Oligocene. Ice began accumulating on Antarctica after tens of millions of years without large permanent polar ice sheets. This marked far more than colder conditions near the poles. It altered the entire circulation of the world's oceans, influencing how heat, nutrients, and marine life moved across immense distances. Geography contributed to this transformation. Antarctica gradually separated farther from South America until a marine gateway known today as the Drake Passage allowed uninterrupted water to circulate around the southern continent. That circulation strengthened into the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, a powerful system that isolated Antarctica from warmer northern waters. Heat became distributed differently than before, producing cooler global conditions and reorganizing marine environments that had remained relatively stable for millions of years. As temperatures declined, extensive, warm, shallow seas gradually contracted. Tropical habitats became smaller, while cooler water expanded into regions that had previously supported communities adapted to warmer climates. Fish populations shifted their distributions. Marine mammals followed changing food sources. Ecological relationships that had remained productive for countless generations became increasingly unstable. The transformation unfolded over long spans of geological time, though its cumulative effects reached nearly every level of the marine ecosystem. Basilosaurus depended upon precisely those warm environments that were disappearing. Its elongated body and distinctive swimming style had evolved within tropical seas, where prey remained abundant throughout much of its range. As habitats changed, food resources became less predictable and increasingly fragmented. Large predators require reliable energy supplies, and any sustained decline in prey places exceptional pressure upon animals occupying the highest levels of a food web. Adaptation can succeed only when inherited variation keeps pace with environmental change. Other whale lineages possessed body forms better suited to the changing oceans. Natural selection increasingly favored more streamlined shapes capable of efficient, long distance swimming through a wider range of marine conditions. The unusually elongated design of Basilosaurus, successful during the late Eocene, gradually disappeared from the evolutionary record. By the close of that epoch, the great archaeocete whales had reached the end of their distinctive experiment in mammalian evolution. Their disappearance reflected a familiar pattern already woven through Earth's history. No asteroid struck the planet, and no sudden volcanic catastrophe erased them. Climatic change slowly transformed the environments supporting their success until their specialized adaptations no longer matched the conditions surrounding them. The ocean itself had changed, and the balance between predator, prey, and habitat shifted beyond the limits of their remarkable design. Although Basilosaurus vanished, the whale lineage continued with extraordinary resilience. Descendants inherited many successful features while gradually abandoning others that no longer served them well. New forms diversified through the cooling seas, exploring habitats their predecessors had never occupied. Across millions of years, those evolutionary pathways continued branching into increasingly specialized whales, demonstrating once again that extinction within one lineage can create space for another chapter to unfold within the same enduring family. The close of one age often prepares the foundation for another without any clear boundary visible from within it. After the disappearance of Basilosaurus, the oceans continued changing beneath a cooler global climate. Between about 34 million and 23 million years ago, during the Oligocene epoch, marine ecosystems entered a period of remarkable reorganization. Waters that had once favored broad tropical communities began operating under new physical conditions, gradually assembling an ocean unlike any that had existed since long before the great asteroid impact. Cooling altered more than temperature alone. Colder seawater retained greater amounts of dissolved oxygen, allowing many marine organisms to thrive under conditions that had once been less favorable. Ocean circulation also became increasingly vigorous as currents connected distant regions with greater efficiency. Deep water, enriched by nutrients released through the slow decomposition of organic material, rose toward the sunlit surface in widespread episodes of upwelling. Those nutrients nourished microscopic plankton, whose extraordinary productivity formed the living foundation supporting nearly every creature higher in the marine food web. As plankton flourished, entire ecosystems responded. Small fish multiplied in tremendous numbers, while larger predatory fish expanded alongside them. Marine birds found dependable feeding grounds across productive coastlines. Squid diversified through open waters. Every level of ocean life became more interconnected as energy flowed upward from microscopic organisms into progressively larger animals. The sea had become a place where biological abundance could sustain creatures requiring enormous amounts of food, creating opportunities that had scarcely existed during the preceding epoch. Whales also entered an important period of innovation. Some descendants of earlier archaeocetes abandoned the hunting lifestyle inherited from their ancestors and followed an entirely different evolutionary direction. Their teeth gradually gave way to flexible plates of baleen, allowing them to filter countless tiny organisms from seawater instead of pursuing individual prey. Early baleen whales spread through productive feeding grounds where dense blooms of plankton supported immense concentrations of small animals. Other whale groups retained teeth and continued hunting fish or squid, adding further diversity to expanding marine communities. The oceans now contained growing populations of large mammals, occupying many ecological roles. Dolphins, early baleen whales, toothed whales, and sea cows represented substantial stores of energy moving through coastal seas and open waters alike. Many traveled predictable routes between feeding areas, gathering in places where food remained especially abundant. Such concentrations created a remarkable opportunity for any predator capable of capturing prey, measured not in pounds, but in tons. Among the sharks already inhabiting these waters existed a lineage with the potential to exploit that opportunity. Generation after generation, individuals achieving greater size could attack larger prey, survive longer between successful hunts, and produce offspring carrying similar advantages. Under conditions where food remained plentiful, increasing body size became an effective evolutionary strategy. Natural selection gradually favored sharks that pushed beyond the limits reached by their ancestors, transforming an already capable predator into something unprecedented. Around 23 million years ago, at the beginning of the Miocene epoch, that transformation had produced one of the most formidable hunters ever to enter the sea. Its scientific name, Otatus megalodon, means giant tooth, an appropriate description for a shark whose fossil teeth often resemble carefully crafted blades when discovered today. Long before complete skeletons could ever fossilize, those enormous teeth preserved the first unmistakable evidence that the oceans had welcomed another giant, shaped by abundance, as surely as earlier titans had been shaped by different worlds. Among all the predators that have entered Earth's oceans, one carried a reputation built almost entirely from its teeth. Long before scientists understood its full proportions, enormous triangular fossils emerged from cliffs, riverbanks, and coastal sediments around the world. For centuries, they were mistaken for petrified tongues, strange stones, or relics of mythical creatures. They belonged instead to a shark whose true scale stretched beyond ordinary imagination, the giant known as Otodus megalodon. Megalodon belonged to the megatooth shark lineage, a family that had spent millions of years gradually increasing in size through successive generations. Earlier relatives were already formidable hunters, though each evolutionary step favored individuals capable of tackling larger prey and storing greater energy reserves. By the beginning of the Miocene epoch, that long progression reached its greatest achievement. Megalodon became the largest predatory fish known to have lived, representing the ultimate expression of a lineage refined through immense spans of geological time. The most careful scientific analyses estimate a maximum length of about 58 feet. Some researchers have proposed even larger dimensions, though 58 feet remains the most conservative upper estimate supported by current evidence. Such an animal likely weighed between 50 and 70 tons, making it vastly larger than any living predatory shark. A body of that scale demanded extraordinary amounts of energy every day, creating nutritional requirements unlike those of almost any other fish in Earth's history. Calculations based upon body size suggest that an adult required roughly 100,000 calories each day merely to sustain normal biological function. That amount of energy has often been compared to approximately 1,500 cheeseburgers, a modern comparison illustrating the tremendous appetite necessary to support such a massive predator. Small fish could never satisfy those demands. Survival depended upon hunting prey rich in fat and muscle, allowing each successful attack to provide enormous nutritional rewards. Large marine mammals supplied exactly that opportunity. Early whales, dolphins, sea cows, and other sizable ocean animals formed the foundation of the shark's diet. Fossil discoveries from Miocene and Pliocene deposits preserve compelling evidence of these encounters. Whale ribs, vertebrae, and shoulder bones display deep gouges and serrated cuts matching the distinctive edges of megalodon teeth. Some injuries reveal healing, showing that certain whales escaped attacks and survived long enough for damaged bone to repair itself. Others preserve damage consistent with fatal encounters between predator and prey. The teeth themselves remain among the most remarkable fossils ever recovered. Individual teeth reached nearly 7 inches in length, with broad triangular crowns bordered by finely serrated cutting edges. Their shape proved exceptionally effective for slicing through thick blubber, dense muscle, and sturdy bone. The largest confirmed tooth measures about 6.9 inches, nearly 3 times longer than the largest known tooth of a modern great white shark. Even isolated specimens convey the immense scale of the animal that once carried hundreds of them within powerful jaws. Because shark skeletons consist mostly of cartilage, complete bodies rarely survive fossilization. Teeth, formed from highly mineralized tissues, preserve readily after burial beneath seafloor sediments. Thousands have been discovered across nearly every continent, with Antarctica standing as the notable exception. Their widespread distribution reveals a predator ranging through oceans across much of the world for roughly 20 million years, from about 23 million until 3.6 million years ago. No other known ocean predator maintained the highest position in marine ecosystems for such an extraordinary span of time. Imagine drifting through a Miocene sea, where large whales had become an everyday presence instead of a rare spectacle. Between about 23 million and 5 million years ago, productive oceans supported expanding populations of marine mammals across broad continental shelves. Warm coastal waters, enriched by seasonal upwelling, attracted schools of fish and dense concentrations of plankton, drawing whales into dependable feeding grounds. Wherever these gatherings formed, another giant often remained nearby, hidden only by the depth and immensity of the sea itself. The baleen whales of this period had not yet reached the astonishing dimensions of their modern descendants. Most measured between 15 and 30 feet in length, making them substantial animals while remaining far smaller than today's largest species. Their bodies moved through sheltered coastal regions where food accumulated in remarkable abundance. These feeding areas became reliable destinations repeated across generations, creating predictable opportunities for a predator capable of overwhelming mammals many times larger than ordinary fish. Evidence preserved in fossil bones reveals that Ototus megalodon hunted with impressive precision. Numerous whale skeletons display deep tooth marks concentrated around the chest and the bases of the front flippers. Those locations contain the heart, lungs, and major blood vessels supporting the entire body. A devastating strike to those regions could cripple even a healthy whale within moments. Instead of engaging in prolonged high-speed pursuits across open water, the giant shark appears to have relied upon powerful surprise attacks that rapidly weakened its prey before the final approach. Such a strategy matched the physical demands of an enormous hunter. Accelerating a body weighing many tons required tremendous energy, making efficiency especially valuable. Delivering one carefully placed attack consumed less energy than sustaining a lengthy chase. Once an injured whale lost strength through blood loss or impaired movement, escape became increasingly difficult. The predator could conserve its own energy while allowing exhaustion and injury to complete much of the hunt. Another important advantage lay within its physiology. Chemical studies of fossil teeth indicate that Megalodon possessed regional endothermy, allowing portions of its body to remain warmer than the surrounding seawater. This adaptation supported stronger swimming muscles and more efficient sensory organs, even in cooler conditions. Unlike fully cold-blooded sharks, whose activity closely followed water temperature, Megalodon could remain an effective hunter across a broader range of marine environments. That flexibility expanded its hunting grounds far beyond tropical coastlines alone. Its life likely began in far safer surroundings. Paleontologists have identified fossil sites in places including Panama and the Canary Islands where juvenile teeth occur in unusually high numbers. These locations are widely interpreted as nursery habitats, protected coastal waters where young sharks spent their earliest years before venturing into deeper seas. Shallow environments offered abundant food while reducing encounters with the largest marine predators. As the young animals matured, they gradually entered open oceans already occupied by fully grown adults. For nearly 20 million years, every part of this ecological system remained closely connected. Productive waters sustained whales. Whales sustained giant sharks, and sheltered coastlines nurtured each new generation. The arrangement endured across immense spans of time because climate, ocean circulation, and marine productivity remained favorable. Within that balance, Megalodon occupied the highest predatory position with extraordinary success, its continued dominance reflecting an ocean that consistently supplied the resources required for one of Earth's greatest hunters to flourish. Extinction sometimes arrives without spectacle. A species may continue living through countless generations while the world surrounding it changes piece by piece, each alteration seeming small beside the last. That gradual pattern marked the final chapter of Ototus Megalodon. For millions of years, it remained one of the dominant hunters of the sea, though the environmental balance that had supported its success slowly drifted beyond the limits of its remarkable biology. No single disaster ended its reign. Many subtle transformations accumulated until survival became impossible. Beginning around 5 million years ago, Earth entered another extended period of global cooling. Expanding ice sheets across the northern hemisphere influenced sea level, ocean circulation, and marine temperatures over immense stretches of time. Waters that had once remained comfortably warm across broad regions became progressively cooler, especially at middle and higher latitudes. Ocean ecosystems adjusted to these new conditions, redistributing marine life in ways that affected predators and prey alike. Although Megalodon possessed regional endothermy that helped maintain elevated temperatures within important tissues, it still relied upon warm coastal environments for successful reproduction. Fossil evidence indicates that juveniles developed in protected shallow waters where conditions favored rapid growth. As cooling continued and sea levels declined, many of these nursery habitats became smaller or disappeared altogether. Coastal regions changed shape, suitable temperatures retreated, and young sharks likely faced increasingly limited places where early development could occur safely. A population cannot remain stable if each new generation encounters fewer opportunities to mature. Changes among prey species added another challenge. During the same interval, baleen whales continued evolving alongside the cooling oceans. Many lineages increased substantially in body size while becoming stronger swimmers, capable of sustained travel through colder offshore waters. Improved diving ability allowed them to exploit deeper feeding grounds, rich in plankton and small fish. Food remained plentiful for these whales, though much of it now existed beyond the environments where Megalodon hunted most effectively. The prey did not vanish, it gradually became less accessible. Ecological competition also shifted. Smaller predatory whales belonging to the ancestors of modern killer whales developed increasingly sophisticated cooperative hunting behaviors. Working together, these mammals could pursue large prey through coordination instead of relying upon the solitary ambush strategy that had served Megalodon for millions of years. Group hunting offered flexibility across changing environments, allowing coordinated predators to exploit opportunities unavailable to a single giant shark. Competition alone did not determine the outcome, though it added another source of pressure during an already difficult period. These influences reinforced one another across thousands of generations. Fewer nursery habitats produced fewer surviving juveniles. Altered whale behavior reduced hunting success. Expanding competitors occupied ecological roles once dominated by the giant shark. Cooling oceans continued reshaping marine communities without interruption. Each factor remained manageable in isolation, yet together they gradually undermined the conditions supporting one of Earth's greatest predators. Around 3.6 million years ago, Megalodon disappeared from the fossil record. Its enormous teeth, once deposited in marine sediments across much of the world, no longer appeared in younger geological layers. The longest reigning apex predator known from Earth's oceans had reached its conclusion after roughly 20 million years of dominance. Its disappearance reflected no failure of strength or design. The shark remained superbly adapted to the world in which it had evolved. As climates shifted, coastlines changed, prey transformed, and marine ecosystems reorganized, the environment that had once sustained such an extraordinary hunter slowly faded away. When that supporting world disappeared, the giant that depended upon it faded with it, leaving only its remarkable teeth to mark the passage of an ocean unlike any that exists today. The disappearance of one giant left no empty throne waiting to be claimed. The sea itself continued evolving, reshaping the pathways through which energy moved from microscopic life to the largest animals. Conditions that had gradually erased Ototus megalodon also encouraged an entirely different solution to survival. Strength alone no longer defined success. The changing ocean increasingly rewarded efficiency, endurance, and the ability to gather immense quantities of food from places where abundance appeared only for limited seasons. As northern hemisphere ice sheets expanded, they influenced atmospheric circulation across much of the planet. Stronger and more persistent winds pushed surface waters away from many coastlines, allowing colder water from the deep ocean to rise towards sunlight. This process, known as upwelling, carried phosphorus, nitrogen, iron, and many other dissolved nutrients that had accumulated through the gradual recycling of organic matter far below the surface. Once those nutrients reached illuminated waters, microscopic phytoplankton multiplied with extraordinary speed, forming the foundation for increasingly productive marine ecosystems. Tiny drifting animals responded almost immediately. Krill, small shrimp-like crustaceans feeding upon abundant phytoplankton, gathered into immense swarms containing countless individuals. Fish, seabirds, seals, and whales converged wherever these blooms developed. Food no longer remained distributed evenly throughout broad, warm seas, as it had during earlier chapters of Earth's history. Instead, productivity became concentrated in remarkable seasonal gatherings linked to ocean currents and coastal upwelling zones. Periods of overwhelming abundance alternated with long journeys between feeding grounds. Such an arrangement challenged many marine animals. Species depending upon constant access to moderate amounts of food encountered greater difficulty as resources became clustered in time and place. Creatures capable of traveling long distances gained a considerable advantage because they could follow recurring cycles of productivity across the oceans. Mobility became closely tied to survival, connecting distant feeding grounds through annual migrations extending across thousands of miles. One lineage already possessed the foundation needed to exploit this transformed world. Baleen whales had spent millions of years refining a feeding system unlike that of any predator pursuing individual prey. Flexible baleen plates hanging from the upper jaw strained tiny animals from enormous mouthfuls of seawater. Every successful lunge captured countless krill within moments. As seasonal blooms became larger and denser, this strategy yielded extraordinary returns. Increasing body size allowed a whale to engulf still greater volumes of water while storing enough energy to sustain lengthy migrations between productive regions. Another geological event strengthened these emerging opportunities. Around 3 million years ago, the gradual closure of the Central American Seaway completed a profound reorganization of ocean circulation between the Atlantic and Pacific basins. Currents shifted into new configurations that further intensified major upwelling systems in several parts of the world. Productive waters became even richer, supporting immense concentrations of krill across key feeding areas. The oceans had entered a phase capable of sustaining biological productivity on a scale rarely seen since the distant past. Within this transformed environment, gigantism acquired a new meaning. Earlier marine giants had depended upon overpowering large prey through speed, strength, or formidable jaws. Baleen whales followed another path entirely. Their immense size served as an engine for efficient travel, prolonged fasting, and astonishing feeding capacity. Every seasonal bloom delivered enough nourishment to support bodies growing ever larger without requiring the risks of hunting formidable animals. The climate that had gradually removed one of the greatest predators had simultaneously assembled the conditions for the greatest filter feeder. Ocean currents, drifting plankton, and dense clouds of krill combined into an ecological foundation capable of supporting a creature larger than any animal Earth had ever known. Gigantic bodies do not always emerge through an endlessly gradual climb. In the history of baleen whales, one of evolution's most dramatic increases in size unfolded surprisingly late. For tens of millions of years after the first baleen-bearing whales appeared around 36 million years ago, these animals remained impressive without approaching the dimensions of the greatest giants living today. Most measured between roughly 15 and 30 feet, feeding successfully across a variety of marine habitats while occupying ecological roles that demanded neither extraordinary mass nor exceptional migration. Then, between about 3 million and 2 million years ago, the fossil record reveals a striking transformation. Several unrelated baleen whale lineages began increasing in size at nearly the same stage of Earth's history. This pattern did not occur within a single family alone. Multiple branches of the baleen whale tree independently moved toward enormous bodies, suggesting that each lineage was responding to the same environmental forces. Paleontologists recognize this repeated trend as compelling evidence that changing oceans favored larger animals regardless of their particular ancestry. The advantage came from the rhythm of food itself. Seasonal upwelling produced immense blooms of plankton, followed by equally impressive concentrations of krill. These feeding opportunities could support astonishing numbers of animals, though they appeared only in certain places and during limited parts of the year. Whales capable of reaching those productive regions, consuming extraordinary quantities of food, and storing surplus energy gained an important survival advantage. Smaller individuals faced greater risks during long intervals separating one seasonal feast from the next. Larger bodies carried greater reserves, improving the chances of surviving migration and periods of scarcity. Natural selection gradually reinforced those differences across countless generations. Each increase in body size allowed a whale to carry thicker layers of blubber, maintain body temperature more efficiently, and travel immense distances while using proportionally less energy than smaller relatives. Large whales also benefited from simple physical principles. As bodies become larger, their volume increases faster than their surface area, reducing relative heat loss during long journeys through colder waters. The ocean had created circumstances where immense size became an advantage instead of a burden. Among these expanding baleen whales emerged the species now known as Balaenoptera musculus, the blue whale. Every feature of its biology reflects adaptation to a world shaped by seasonal abundance. During peak feeding periods, a single individual may consume as much as 6 tons of krill in one day, filtering countless tiny crustaceans from enormous mouthfuls of seawater. Much of that energy becomes blubber, which may reach about 12 inches in thickness and serves as both insulation and stored fuel. Those reserves support migrations extending as far as 10,000 miles between feeding grounds and breeding areas. Its feeding method appears almost effortless, despite the immense forces involved. A blue whale accelerates toward a dense swarm of krill, opens its expandable mouth, and engulfs a tremendous volume of seawater. Elastic tissues surrounding the throat stretch dramatically before powerful muscles force the captured water outward through flexible baleen plates. Krill remain trapped inside, providing an immense harvest from a single lunge. Repeated many times across productive feeding grounds, this strategy supplies enough energy to sustain the largest animal known to have lived. Across more than 250 million years, Earth's oceans repeatedly produced extraordinary giants through changing evolutionary experiments. Giant marine reptiles dominated one era, immense sharks another. The blue whale followed neither path. It became colossal without pursuing prey or crushing rivals. Its greatness emerged from currents, plankton, migration, and the remarkable productivity of a transformed sea, demonstrating that the greatest body ever assembled by evolution was built upon the smallest living creatures. There comes a point where familiar comparisons lose their usefulness. Ordinary measures begin to fall away because no living creature offers a true reference. The blue whale exists at that boundary. Every organ, every movement, and every breath reflects a body assembled on a scale unmatched anywhere in the known history of life. It is the culmination of countless evolutionary adjustments, expressed through proportions that seem almost beyond belief while remaining entirely real. Its heart is roughly the size of a small automobile, an immense muscular pump working without pause through a lifetime that may extend beyond many human generations. During periods of rest, it beats only about 8 to 10 times each minute. Each contraction sends enormous volumes of blood through a circulatory system stretching the length of the whale's body. The pulse is so powerful that specialized scientific instruments have detected its rhythmic vibrations from as far away as 2 miles under suitable conditions, revealing the steady cadence of the largest heart ever known. The largest blue whale, reliably measured, was an adult female examined during 1909 at a whaling station on South Georgia Island in the South Atlantic Ocean. Her recorded length reached 110 feet, with an additional 1.6 inches beyond that remarkable measurement. She was never placed upon a scale because no equipment available at the time could accurately weigh such an immense animal. From her dimensions, scientists estimate that her body mass probably ranged between 150 and 200 tons. At the upper end of that estimate, the comparison becomes extraordinary. 200 tons exceeds the estimated mass of the largest known dinosaur, surpasses the greatest ichthyosaur reconstructed from fossil evidence, and outweighs even the mighty Otatus Megalodon. No elephant, no prehistoric land mammal, and no terrestrial reptile has approached such a mass. The blue whale therefore stands as the largest animal presently known to have existed across Earth's entire history, a lineage extending back roughly 4,500,000,000 years. Many individual parts of its body equal the size of complete animals. The tongue alone weighs about 3 tons, comparable to a fully grown Asian elephant. Major arteries become so broad that a human child could pass through them. A newborn calf enters the world, already measuring around 23 feet in length, while weighing approximately 3 tons. At birth alone, it exceeds the adult size of countless species occupying forests, grasslands, deserts, rivers, and seas across the planet. Communication matches this extraordinary scale. Blue whales produce deep vocalizations ranging between 10 and 40 hertz, frequencies lying below normal human hearing without amplification. These sounds enter a natural layer within the deep ocean where acoustic energy travels with remarkably little loss. Before widespread industrial activity introduced constant underwater noise, such calls could potentially cross thousands of miles, allowing distant whales to remain connected across enormous stretches of ocean. A single vocal exchange may once have linked individuals separated by entire ocean basins. Before the 20th century, scientists estimate that approximately 350,000 blue whales traveled through the Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, Arctic, and Southern oceans. Their migrations followed recurring cycles of food and reproduction established over countless generations. Across those waters moved the greatest animals ever assembled by evolution, each carrying the deep pulse of a transformed ocean. Their immense presence seemed as enduring as the currents themselves, until human ships entered the same seas with technologies capable of reaching even these incomparable giants. For almost all of human history, the blue whale remained beyond our reach. Its immense speed, powerful body, and life far from shore protected it from the hunting methods available to early seafaring societies. Coastal whalers harvested smaller species that floated after death or traveled close enough to be approached with hand-thrown harpoons. The greatest animal on Earth continued its migrations largely untouched, moving through oceans that still offered refuge from human pursuit. That separation ended during the 19th century as industrial technology transformed the relationship between people and the sea. Early commercial fleets focused heavily upon sperm whales and right whales, whose behavior made them comparatively easier to capture. As those populations declined, the search for larger and more profitable targets intensified. A decisive turning point arrived in 1864 when the Norwegian inventor Sven Foyn introduced the explosive harpoon cannon mounted aboard steam-powered whaling vessels. These ships combined mechanical speed with unprecedented killing power, allowing crews to pursue virtually any whale they encountered. Blue whales, once protected by their swiftness and strength, suddenly became practical targets. Each individual represented an extraordinary economic reward. A single whale yielded dozens of tons of oil that supplied products ranging from margarine to soap and industrial lubricants. Its meat became food or animal feed, while bones could be processed into fertilizer and bone meal. Every successful hunt generated immense commercial value, encouraging fleets to expand farther into the world's oceans in search of additional whales. The scale of the harvest soon exceeded anything previously seen in marine history. Between 1900 and 1966, when international protection finally ended commercial hunting of blue whales, scientists estimate that approximately 360,000 individuals were killed. The most devastating season occurred during 1931, when more than 29,000 blue whales were taken from Antarctic waters within a single whaling season. Numbers that had accumulated through millions of years of evolution vanished with startling speed under continuous industrial pressure. The consequences reached nearly every ocean basin. Antarctic blue whales suffered the greatest losses. A population estimated at roughly 239,000 individuals declined to fewer than 400 by the middle of the 1960s. More than 99% of that regional population disappeared within less than 70 years. Such a collapse unfolded far faster than natural evolutionary processes could replace breeding adults, leaving entire migration routes nearly empty where enormous gatherings had once returned each year. Across the globe, the outlook became equally severe. Before large-scale commercial whaling, the worldwide blue whale population likely numbered around 350,000 animals. By the time hunting restrictions finally arrived, that figure had fallen to perhaps 5,000. Biologists recognize that populations reduced to such low numbers face profound challenges. Fewer breeding adults limit genetic diversity, make reproduction less efficient, and increase vulnerability to disease, environmental change, and simple chance. Survival becomes increasingly uncertain even after direct hunting has ceased. Earlier chapters of Earth's history witnessed giant marine reptiles disappear through shifting climates and changing ecosystems. Massive sharks faded as ancient oceans transformed beyond recognition. The decline of the blue whale followed another path entirely. No asteroid struck the planet. No chain of volcanoes reshaped the atmosphere. Within less than a single human lifetime, one species developed the tools to bring the largest animal ever known to the edge of extinction, compressing destruction that nature had never accomplished across hundreds of millions of years. Protection arrived before disappearance, though protection alone could not restore what had been lost. When commercial hunting of blue whales ended during 1966, surviving animals still faced the long task of rebuilding populations that had been reduced to only a fraction of their former abundance. The harpoons had fallen still, yet the biological consequences of decades of intensive hunting continued unfolding across the generations that followed. Recovery had begun, though it would proceed according to the unhurried pace written into the life history of the whale itself. Modern estimates suggest that between roughly 10,000 and 25,000 blue whales now inhabit the world's oceans. Even the highest of those estimates represents only a small portion of the population that existed before industrial whaling expanded across the globe. Scientists calculate that today's numbers amount to approximately 3 to 7% of historical abundance. Entire migration routes once traveled by countless whales now support only scattered individuals, leaving many feeding grounds far less populated than they were through most of recent evolutionary history. The explanation for this gradual recovery lies within the biology of the species. Blue whales do not reproduce quickly. A young whale generally requires about 10 years before reaching sexual maturity. Pregnancy lasts close to 12 months, producing a single calf after an immense investment of energy by the mother. Following birth, females usually wait another 2 or 3 years before producing another offspring. This slow rhythm served the species successfully for millions of years, while adult survival remained high. After industrial hunting removed hundreds of thousands of breeding animals, the same reproductive strategy limited how rapidly populations could recover. Population growth therefore unfolds across centuries instead of decades. Every calf carries unusual importance because each represents years of parental investment and a future breeder capable of supporting generations still to come. Even under favorable conditions, mathematics places firm limits upon how quickly a species with such a prolonged life cycle can rebuild its numbers. Conservation may prevent additional decline, though it cannot accelerate reproduction beyond the biological tempo shaped through evolution. The influence of whales extends well beyond their own populations. Blue whales participate continuously in the circulation of nutrients throughout the ocean. They often feed at considerable depth before returning toward the surface, where they release waste rich in iron, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Marine scientists describe this process as the whale pump. These recycled nutrients fertilize sunlit surface waters, encouraging the growth of phytoplankton that forms the base of countless marine food webs. Tiny organisms benefit first, followed by krill, fish, seabirds, and many other creatures connected through the same ecological network. Industrial whaling disrupted that natural circulation on an enormous scale. Across all whale species combined, researchers estimate that approximately 2,900,000 whales were killed during the 20th century. By total biomass, this represents the greatest known removal of large animals ever carried out by human activity. Regions that once supported dense whale populations experienced measurable reductions in nutrient recycling, altering patterns of biological productivity. Some scientific studies suggest that phytoplankton became less abundant in areas historically enriched by whales, influencing ecosystems reaching far beyond the animals themselves. Many consequences of that transformation remain under investigation today. Oceans continue functioning, currents continue flowing, and seasonal blooms still appear, though the marine environment inherited by the modern world differs from the one that existed before industrial whaling reshaped it. Fewer great whales now travel those waters, carrying fewer nutrients between the depths and the surface. The legacy of that absence reaches through food webs, ocean chemistry, and ecological relationships that evolved across millions of years, leaving changes whose full extent science is still patiently uncovering. Far below the waves, where sunlight never reaches and the seafloor stretches across immense darkness, the ending of a whale's life marks the beginning of something entirely different. This remarkable process remained almost unknown until deep sea exploration revealed what happens after one of these giants sinks into the depths. Scientists now recognize that a whale does not vanish into the ocean after death. It becomes the center of an ecosystem unlike any other, transforming a single body into a source of life that can endure for generations. This event is known as a whale fall. Gravity slowly carries the enormous body toward the ocean floor, where it settles upon sediments that often receive little nourishment from above. In many deep marine environments, food arrives only as tiny drifting particles descending from distant surface waters. A whale represents an extraordinary concentration of organic material delivered all at once, creating an opportunity that countless organisms have evolved to exploit. The first chapter begins almost immediately after the carcass reaches the bottom. Sharks, hagfish, crabs, and numerous scavenging fishes gather from surrounding waters, guided by chemical traces spreading through the ocean. Hundreds of animals may feed upon the same whale over many months, removing skin, muscle, and internal organs with remarkable efficiency. For creatures adapted to a landscape where meals are often scarce, a single whale provides nourishment on a scale that may sustain local scavenger populations for an extended period. As the soft tissues disappear, another community gradually arrives. Smaller invertebrates settle across the remaining skeleton, including worms, crustaceans, mollusks, and many other organisms adapted to consuming the organic matter still trapped within cartilage and bone. The skeleton itself becomes valuable habitat. Hard surfaces are uncommon across many regions of the deep sea floor, making whale bones attractive places for sponges, corals, and countless smaller animals seeking shelter or attachment. What once supported a living whale now supports an expanding neighborhood of marine life. The transformation continues for many years after the skeleton appears almost bare. Deep inside, the bones remain rich stores of lipids accumulated throughout the whale's lifetime. Specialized bacteria gradually break down these reserves, releasing hydrogen sulfide into the surrounding environment. Other microorganisms harness that chemical compound through chemosynthesis, producing energy without relying upon sunlight. Entire food webs develop around this process, allowing animals to thrive in complete darkness through chemical reactions instead of photosynthesis. Some inhabitants of whale falls have never been observed living anywhere else on Earth. Researchers have documented more than 400 distinct species associated with a single large whale fall. Specialized worms, clams, crustaceans, bacteria, and many other organisms participate in a succession that may continue for 50 to 100 years. Remarkably, the ecological influence of the whale can persist as long as, or even longer than, the animal itself once lived. Generation after generation of deep sea creatures depends upon energy stored within bones that settled onto the seabed decades earlier. This hidden cycle expands the meaning of marine gigantism. During life, whales transport nutrients across oceans, shaping ecosystems through movement and feeding. After death, they nourish entirely different communities resting upon the deepest seafloor. Their bodies become landscapes, their bones become foundations, and their stored energy continues flowing through living organisms long after the final heartbeat has passed. Even in dissolution, the greatest animals ever produced by Earth remain architects of life, extending their influence across decades in places where daylight has never entered. Looking across this long procession of giants, individual lives begin to merge into a single, recurring design. Each chapter seemed unique while it unfolded, shaped by different animals, different continents, and different oceans. Viewed together, another story appears beneath them all. The greatest marine creatures were never isolated marvels existing apart from their surroundings. Everyone emerged from an ocean that briefly favored extraordinary size, and everyone disappeared after that supporting world was transformed beyond recognition. The first of these towering forms arrived after the Great Dying reshaped life across the planet. Entire marine ecosystems had vanished, leaving ecological opportunities that remained unoccupied for millions of years. Ichthyosaurs entered those waters and expanded into forms unlike anything before them. Some eventually reached astonishing proportions, flourishing while food webs recovered and diversified. Their decline began only after immense volcanic eruptions altered the chemistry and circulation of the seas, changing conditions that had sustained their success through countless generations. Another opportunity followed. Pliosaurs inherited marine ecosystems already populated with abundant prey, becoming dominant hunters through the middle part of the age of dinosaurs. Their tremendous jaws and muscular bodies matched the demands of that world. Geological change gradually reorganized marine environments during the transition between the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. As ecosystems shifted, the balance supporting those immense predators weakened until their dominance faded from the oceans. Mosasaurs expanded into that opening with remarkable speed. Descended from terrestrial reptiles that returned to the sea, they evolved into powerful swimmers, occupying nearly every major marine habitat. Their diversity and abundance reflected healthy food webs extending from microscopic plankton to enormous vertebrates. Everything changed when the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction disrupted life throughout the oceans. The collapse reached upward from the smallest organisms, eventually removing the prey upon which even the greatest predators depended. Without those foundations, the mosasaurs disappeared alongside countless other marine species. Mammals inherited oceans, transformed by that extinction. Among them emerged Basilosaurus, whose elongated body reflected an earlier stage in whale evolution. Warm, shallow seas provided the habitat where it prospered during the late Eocene. Progressive global cooling later altered coastlines, temperatures, and marine communities. Ecological conditions supporting Basilosaurus gradually diminished, opening another path for different whales better suited to changing seas. Much later came Otodus Megalodon, flourishing through productive oceans rich with marine mammals. For around 20 million years, it remained among the greatest predators ever assembled. Cooling climates, altered coastlines, changing prey distributions, and shrinking nursery habitats accumulated across long stretches of time until survival became increasingly difficult. Extinction arrived without catastrophe from space or sudden planetary upheaval. Environmental change alone proved sufficient. The blue whale followed a different strategy built upon concentrated blooms of microscopic life. Intensified upwelling rewarded immense filter feeders capable of traveling enormous distances between seasonal feeding grounds. Evolution responded by producing the largest animal known. Its greatest crisis emerged from a source unlike any encountered by earlier giants. Industrial hunting compressed devastation that natural processes had never achieved so rapidly, reducing populations within the span of a single human lifetime. One principle connects every chapter. The ocean determined the possibilities available to each giant long before any individual was born. It supplied food, temperature, chemistry, and habitat in combinations that favored extraordinary bodies for a limited interval. When those combinations disappeared through volcanic upheaval, asteroid impact, climatic transformation, or human activity, even the mightiest creatures could not remain unchanged. Their stories reveal that gigantism was never a permanent achievement. It was always a temporary conversation between evolving life and an ever-changing sea. The story arrives at the present without leaving its oldest themes behind. Oceans remain dynamic, shaped by shifting currents, changing temperatures, and the continuous movement of nutrients through the water. The forces that once encouraged the rise of marine giants have never stopped operating. They continue today, though under conditions increasingly influenced by rapid, human-driven climate change. Looking closely at modern oceans reveals processes that echo patterns already traced through deep time, even as the details differ from those of earlier ages. One of the most important processes is upwelling, the upward movement of cold, nutrient-rich water from the deep ocean into sunlit surface layers. Those rising waters deliver iron, phosphorus, nitrogen, and other nutrients that sustain phytoplankton. Phytoplankton support krill, and krill nourish many of the largest animals alive today. Earlier sections followed how intensified upwelling helped create dense seasonal feeding grounds that favored enormous baleen whales. That ecological foundation depends upon the continued strength and timing of ocean circulation. Modern observations indicate that climate change is altering several upwelling systems around the world, although the effects differ from one region to another. Rising ocean temperatures increase the warmth of surface waters, while changing wind patterns influence how efficiently deeper water reaches the surface. In some locations, upwelling has strengthened, while in others, it has weakened or shifted seasonally. Marine scientists continue studying these regional differences because each can influence the distribution of nutrients and the productivity of local ecosystems. Krill respond closely to these environmental changes. Their populations depend upon suitable temperatures, abundant phytoplankton, and seasonal sea ice in parts of the Southern Ocean. When ocean conditions shift, krill concentrations may become less predictable or move into different regions. Blue whales evolved to exploit dense, seasonal gatherings of these tiny crustaceans across long migratory routes. If productive feeding grounds become more scattered or less reliable, whales may need to travel farther or spend more time searching for sufficient food during feeding seasons. This relationship reflects a familiar ecological principle. Earlier marine giants depended upon environmental conditions that remained favorable for long periods before eventually changing. Ototus megalodon, for example, declined as cooling climates altered prey distributions and coastal nursery habitats over extended spans of time. The mechanisms affecting modern whales differ in important ways, yet both examples demonstrate that changes in ocean structure can influence the largest animals first because immense bodies require immense and dependable energy supplies. Researchers also monitor several additional changes occurring simultaneously. Ocean waters absorb increasing amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, gradually altering seawater chemistry through acidification. Warming influences the distribution of many marine species, while melting polar ice affects circulation and habitat in high latitude regions. These interacting processes may reshape marine food webs over coming decades, although their full combined effects remain an active area of scientific investigation. Understanding those interactions has become one of the central goals of modern oceanography. Past extinctions generally unfolded across hundreds of thousands or millions of years, allowing ecosystems long intervals to adjust as conditions gradually shifted. Many present environmental changes are occurring within decades, compressing ecological responses into far shorter periods. The oceans have experienced transformation many times before, though the current pace presents challenges unlike those recorded during much of recent geological history. The same sea that once nurtured extraordinary giants continues changing today, reminding us that every generation of marine life remains connected to an environment that never stands completely still. Across every age explored in this journey, one truth has continued to return with remarkable consistency. Oceans have changed beyond recognition. Dominant creatures have disappeared, coastlines have shifted, and entire ecosystems have unraveled. Even so, life has repeatedly answered those losses with new beginnings. The path was never immediate, and it was never identical to what came before. Given enough time, the sea assembled fresh communities from the survivors that remained, gradually creating opportunities for entirely different forms of greatness. The aftermath of the Great Dying offered perhaps the most unlikely beginning of all. Marine life had been reduced to a fraction of its former diversity. Waters remained warm, chemically altered, and depleted after the greatest biological crisis known in Earth's history. Recovery unfolded across millions of years, one lineage at a time. Reptiles, whose ancestors had once lived upon land, entered the oceans and adapted with extraordinary speed. Ichthyosaurs emerged from those early experiments, eventually producing giants that would have been unimaginable while the extinction itself was still unfolding. Another transformation arrived when immense volcanic eruptions reshaped the planet during the transition between the Triassic and Jurassic periods. Ecological networks fractured once again, ending the dominance of many established groups. Gradually, marine ecosystems reorganized under changing environmental conditions. Pliosaurs expanded into powerful apex predators, displaying body plans entirely different from the ichthyosaurs before them. Millions of years later, mosasaurs followed another evolutionary path from terrestrial ancestors, rising to prominence without repeating the design of either earlier lineage. The destination remained familiar, even though the route had changed completely. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction erased every large marine reptile within an interval astonishingly brief by geological standards. Recovery began with organisms that survived close to the foundations of marine food webs. Mammals that had once occupied modest ecological roles gradually explored aquatic environments, giving rise to whales through successive evolutionary stages. Among them appeared Basilosaurus, followed much later by baleen whales of unprecedented scale. Another branch of marine life produced Ototus megalodon, whose immense jaws reflected a different strategy entirely. Separate evolutionary histories arrived at extraordinary size through distinct solutions shaped by the oceans available to them. Seen together, these episodes reveal resilience documented repeatedly within the fossil record. Recovery never restored identical ecosystems. The oceans did not recreate ichthyosaurs after they vanished, nor did they rebuild pliosaurs once their age had ended. New giants arose through different anatomical designs, feeding methods, and evolutionary histories. Each reflected the environmental circumstances of its own era. Diversity, adaptation, and natural selection continually explored fresh possibilities until another lineage occupied the ecological space left behind by earlier rulers. This pattern does not diminish the reality of extinction. Every disappearance represented the permanent loss of unique forms that will never return. Resilience operates alongside irreversibility. Life continued, though it continued in altered directions, shaped by survivors adapting to transformed worlds. The oceans remembered no obligation to repeat earlier successes. Their strength lay in constant innovation across immense spans of time. 5 times within this story, marine gigantism emerged through different evolutionary pathways. Giant reptiles yielded to other reptiles. Reptiles eventually gave way to mammals. Predators were replaced by filter feeders. Each transition reflected changing climates, shifting chemistry, reorganized food webs, and countless generations responding to new conditions. The sea has demonstrated, again and again, that it possesses an extraordinary capacity to create greatness from disruption. Its history is neither one of permanence nor of endless loss, but of continual renewal expressed through forms no earlier age could ever have anticipated. After following so many immense lives across such immense spans of time, another perspective gradually comes into focus. The giants themselves remain unforgettable, yet they also point beyond their own existence. Their bodies carried information about the oceans that shaped them. Every extraordinary skeleton, every immense jaw, every sweeping flipper, and every colossal heart reflected environmental conditions that allowed such proportions to exist. In that sense, the greatest marine animals became living records of the seas that produced them. Consider the giant ichthyosaurs that emerged after the greatest biological crisis Earth has ever known. Ichthyodon severnensis, reaching approximately 82 feet in length, represented far more than an unusually large reptile. It revealed that marine ecosystems had recovered enough from the Great Dying to sustain an animal of astonishing scale. Oceans, once stripped of much of their life, eventually accumulated sufficient energy, prey, and ecological stability to support giants unlike any seen before. Its immense body became evidence that recovery had reached a remarkable milestone. Much later, Ototus megalodon expressed another chapter in that continuing story. Teeth approaching 7 inches in length, and a daily requirement approaching 100,000 calories reflected extraordinary abundance throughout warm Miocene seas. Such a predator could exist only where marine mammals were plentiful across broad regions and food remained dependable over countless generations. The shark itself became a measure of ecological richness. Its success did not arise from isolation, but from an entire marine community capable of sustaining one of the most demanding predators evolution had ever produced. The blue whale reveals something different again. Estimated masses approaching 200 tons became possible through concentrated, seasonal productivity generated by powerful ocean circulation. Tiny drifting animals gathered into dense feeding grounds capable of supporting the largest filter feeder in Earth's history. No giant teeth were required, no pursuit of massive prey, only an ecosystem producing extraordinary quantities of microscopic life in the right places at the right times. The immense body of the blue whale therefore records the remarkable efficiency of an ocean configured to concentrate energy with exceptional reliability. Viewed together, these animals resemble biological measuring instruments. Their sizes reflected the capacity of their surroundings. Productive, stable, and interconnected oceans repeatedly generated opportunities for extraordinary growth. When volcanic eruptions altered marine chemistry, when asteroid impacts disrupted food webs, when climates shifted across millions of years, or when human activity removed vast numbers of whales, the giants diminished alongside the environments that had sustained them. Their bodies recorded prosperity as clearly as their disappearances recorded ecological transformation. Paleontologists often reconstruct ancient seas through rock layers, fossils, and chemical signatures preserved within minerals. Giant marine animals offer another form of evidence. Their proportions reveal how much energy circulated through ancient ecosystems, how efficiently food webs functioned, and how consistently those systems could nourish enormous living creatures. Each lineage captures a different interval in the evolving relationship between Earth's oceans and the life they supported. Seen from that perspective, the history of marine giants becomes another way of reading the history of the oceans themselves. Ichthyosaurs preserve the memory of a recovering Triassic world. Otodus Megalodon reflects the richness of Miocene seas. The blue whale embodies the extraordinary productivity that developed as modern ocean circulation matured. These creatures were never separate from the environments around them. Together, they form a living autobiography written across hundreds of millions of years, with each immense body preserving another page in the enduring story of the sea, and the newest pages continue to unfold in the oceans of the present day. At this very moment, somewhere beyond the horizon, a blue whale is moving through open water. Another rises to breathe beneath polar skies. Others travel along the coasts of Chile, Sri Lanka, Iceland, the North Pacific, and the Southern Ocean, following ancient migratory pathways that long predate recorded human history. Across those distant waters, the largest animal ever known continues its life, drawing breath, gathering krill, raising calves, and exchanging calls so deep that much of their sound travels beyond the range of human hearing. That simple fact remains extraordinary. Through every chapter of this journey, giants appeared only to disappear, preserved afterward in fragments of bone and scattered fossils waiting to be uncovered millions of years later. The blue whale stands apart because it has not yet crossed into that record. It belongs to the living world. Scientists study its migrations through satellite tracking, record its vocalizations with underwater instruments, and observe calves swimming beside their mothers. The greatest body ever assembled by evolution still moves through Earth's oceans today. Its continued existence was far from certain. Commercial hunting reduced global numbers to fewer than 5,000 individuals before international protection halted the relentless harvest across most of the world. Since then, several populations have shown gradual recovery, although others remain vulnerable and far below their historical abundance. Progress has been measured across generations instead of years, reflecting the patient rhythm of a species whose life unfolds over many decades. Looking back across hundreds of millions of years reveals that the fate of every giant depended upon the conditions surrounding it. Ichthyosaurs flourished after ecosystems recovered from catastrophe. Pliosaurs prospered, while marine food webs supported their immense strength. Mosasaurs dominated until planetary upheaval dismantled the foundations of their world. Basilosaurus reflected warm seas that later changed. Otatus Megalodon belonged to productive oceans that gradually transformed. None possessed the ability to alter the environmental forces determining whether their lineage would continue. The blue whale shares that same dependence upon healthy oceans. Its enormous body still relies upon productive waters, abundant krill, and stable ecological relationships maintained across entire ocean basins. The difference lies elsewhere. Earlier transformations emerged through volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, or climatic shifts unfolding without intention. Many modern changes arise through the collective actions of a species capable of understanding their consequences. Human activity influences atmospheric composition, ocean chemistry, marine habitats, shipping, fishing, and countless other processes that shape the waters shared with whales. That recognition introduces a circumstance without clear precedent in this story. Geological forces remain active, climates continue evolving, and oceans never stop changing. Alongside those natural influences, now stands a species able to observe, investigate, and respond to the changes it helps create. Knowledge itself has become part of the environment. Decisions made across societies can lessen pressures upon marine ecosystems or intensify them, influencing conditions that future generations of blue whales will encounter. This story has stretched from the aftermath of the Great Dying to the oceans of the present day, following six remarkable lineages through rise, dominance, decline, and renewal. Five survive only through fossils and the scientific record. One still crosses the sea beneath the same sky that stretches above us now. The largest creature ever produced in the 4,500,000,000 year history of Earth has not become a memory. Its story continues, carried forward one migration, one generation, and one heartbeat at a time through an ocean that is still writing its next chapter.